I am ready to introduce the speaker. I first got in contact with Joe Watts nearly 25 years ago when we started corresponding. I had written an article, but as a Prince Hall Mason, Joe took strong exception to, and he had it in his mind that he was going to prove to the world that I didn't know what I was talking about. Unfortunately, when he started digging, he found out I knew what I was talking about, and there were a lot of other mistakes. And in that 25 years, Joe Watts had Joe Watts has become the world's foremost authority on Prince Hall Masonic history. He's built himself into a historian that any group could be proud of. I'm not going to go through all of his titles, all of the things he does. He writes 24 hours a day. He's the president of the Phylaxis Society, which is a carbon copy, not here, of the Related Society. And he's also a district deputy Grand Master at Large, ambassador of goodwill to the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Missouri, imperial historian of the ancient Egyptian Arabic order of nobles and mystics shrine. Sorry guys, I forgot that second Arabic. And he is an authority, and I'm proud that I have something to do with getting him started there. Sometimes I feel like Dr. Frankenstein, but now I'd like to present my doctor, Joseph Alonzo Watts Jr.
Some years ago in Seoul, Korea, to a group of Korean Freemasons with the sprinkling of Prince Hall Freemasons like you have here. And my throat and my voice just completely gave out, and I was struggling up there. I really needed some water, you know. And I looked around to the head table, and all the Koreans are sitting there, they're looking at me, and I'm struggling here, trying to say what I have to say. And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders at me, you know. So I did the only thing that a red-blooded American would do. I took the flowers out of the vase and drank the water. There was a senior warden. Somebody here is a senior warden. Anyway, there was a senior warden during his time in the chair as senior warden. Warden was making plans for his program when he became the worship master and go to the East. And when he finally succeeded to the East, he announced one of his major plans was to purchase a chandelier. You see, the large hall itself was sort of dark and foreboding. And so he felt that a chandelier would really bring some light on the subject here. So he told the craft that he would be out of town for a couple of weeks, and he told his senior warden that he wanted him to go out and purchase a chandelier and have it up there by the time he got back in those couple of weeks. And so he went to, when he returned, he immediately went to a large hall and opened the door, and to his great disappointment, there was no chandelier. So he went to his secretary and he asked him for the minutes to see about the chandelier. And to his great disappointment, there was nothing in the minutes about the chandelier. So he jumped on his secretary. He said, "Brother, what is going on?" You know. So the secretary told him, he said, now Worshipful Master, just wait a minute. We discussed the chandelier. We discussed it in detail. But the reason that there's not mentioned in the minutes is because we couldn't find anybody to spell it. Second of all, we couldn't find nobody to play it. And third, the lodge decided that it wanted some light, and they're going to buy some light, and by God, that's going to be it. It is indeed a privilege to be invited before Research Lodge number 2 to make this presentation, which I call Our Two Masonic Powers, and I will publish this in the Philaxis magazine. As president of the Philaxis Society, the research arm of Prince-Hall Freemasonry, I bring you greetings. I understand from Jerry that I follow 3 of my members here. Alan G. Robinson, Virginia, who is a fellow of the Philaxis Society. Wallace McLeod of Toronto, Canada, who is a member of the Philaxis Society. And Reverend Forrest of my state in Kansas. So I guess I'm in good company since I'm following my own members here to address the Research Lodge number 2. Certainly also it is an honor to see my old friend once again, Keith Harrington from Cedar Rapids, your assistant librarian or your librarian at the Iowa Masonic Library. He is also a fellow of the Philaxis Society. It's good to see him. I haven't seen him for a number of years. And of course, this fellow sitting over here that introduced me some kind of way or another, he is also a member of the Philaxis Society, and like he informed me and reminded me, he is a fellow of that society. So we're certainly proud of all of them. We're proud of Brother Lionheart. We're proud that you are inviting the members of the Philaxis Society to come here to address your craft. You know, there was a time when such a gathering as this would not have taken place, a rarity indeed, whereby mainstream Freemasonry would invite a member of the Prince-Hall Masonic Power over for a chat. The Philaxis Society used to keep track of this type of event, but it is happening all across the country today to the point where we no longer attempt to keep tabs on it. It is a renaissance of a sort, a reaching out, if you will, an attempt to bring an end to the long nightmare of darkness that has brought shame to American Freemasonry. Those of you who have read my book, Black Square and Compass, and I've met somebody here that informed me that he has my book and read it, you will find the events that led up to the formation of the Philaxis Society, which Jerry didn't want to mention, and how it grew from the kinds of hostility and hurt to the presentation this year of medals from our counterparts of the Philadelphia Society. I always like to go around the country, especially when Jerry's around, and to tell people if they have any heartaches about the Philaxis Society or anything that we print in our magazine. Many of you get our magazines. You have to blame Jerry over here and the Philadelphia Society because we are their son. They created us. So if you have any problems, you see Philadelphia. And since he's president, go see Jerry. Things change and we make adjustments in life as a more maturing process takes place. I wrote in my Prince Hall Masonic Prince book, which Research Lodge #2 published, that the most segregated institution in the country today was American Freemasonry. To its shame. However, today we see sweeping changes being made as our two Masonic powers come ever closer together. And this will hopefully bear good fruit for the American craft. I want you to understand that I am not a spokesman for Prince Hall Freemasonry. And like most Masonic historians and scholars and writers, I am not without my critics within my own fraternity, because I do have a sharp tongue and a sharp pen. But this is the nature of the beast for those who dwell in Masonic research and Masonic truths. The ancient Greeks accorded a sincere and due respect to that body of knowledge we now term the liberal arts and sciences by honoring 9 beautiful female deities with the title of muse, a title indicating thoughtful intellectual skills. Kilo, or Cleo, appropriately known as the proclaimer, became the muse of history. She never resigned her past throughout the centuries, and she still reigns over those of us who call ourselves historians. She carries a historic trumpet with which she proclaims events of the past, and a water clock with which she measures the passage of time. Her mother, if you can remember, is named Memory. The tempting muse of history has been courted by writers and scholars of Masonic history with only varying degrees of success. Fidelity to the muse is often painful. History accurately understood and recorded is at best a difficult partner, one who the mask never ceases and whose companionship often waits at the truth of life. But the fidelity is difficult. The terror created when the muse's storm is far worse, as she wreaks a vengeance upon all individuals and institutions who would belittle or change or ignore her. She is, however, a reality and continues to seek knowledge, and our research lodges around the world, be they Porto Fortnari in London or Iowa Research Lodge #2 or Luxy Tenebris Research Chapter of the Phylaxis Society, we come together under the sound of her trumpet to open the eyes of the craft to the pure beauty of Freemasonry. If it were true that the absence of historical knowledge truly protects, then the only logical course would be to abolish historical investigation. If the absence of historical knowledge protects, then our muse's trumpet sounds a false note. Understanding history is difficult because while historical understanding has the virtue of giving a sense of cohesion to a particular community, it has the view of dividing the community also. Masonry in America mirrors mainstream America, and recorded American history itself has reflected the division of the communities. In other words, we do not view history as you do, and you do not view history as we do. But the muse is only interested in historical truths, but man seems not to understand. For some reason, when mainstream America looks at blacks, they first want to identify anyone with a suit or as some sort of a minister or preacher, and I've never been able to understand that. And I do not come here like the minister or preacher with fire and brimstone, to scream and yell, and to jump and to pound, and to make a point. Hopefully, one need not rave like a jackass to make intelligent men understand. And in fact, I do not necessarily fit that mold because I am a Mormon, a Latter-day Saint, if that is of any interest to you. And if you know anything about Mormons, they come with a still voice of reason. And therefore, I hope I will be able to open your minds and to give you a glimpse of our thoughts. For those of closed minds, they may just as well leave, for they are hopeless and lost, not only to us, but to American Freemasonry as well. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who happens to be my mentor, the greatest African-American ever born on these shores of the United States, a Prince Hall Freemason, said it best when he wrote, and I quote, "One is astonished in the study of history at the recurrence of the idea that evil must be forgotten, distorted, skimmed over. We must not remember that Daniel Webster got drunk, but only remember that he was a splendid constitutional lawyer. We must forget that George Washington was a slave owner, or that Thomas Jefferson had mulatto children, or that Alexander Hamilton had Negro blood, and simply remember things we regard as credible and inspiring. The difficulty, of course, with this philosophy is that history loses its value as an incentive and example. It paints perfect men and noble nations, but it does not tell the truth." Ebony magazine editor Lerone Bennett, Jr., who is not a Prince Hall Freemason, recorded it correctly when he wrote and when he noted that, and I quote, "The idea is simple, but the implications are profound and requires a rethinking of the timeline of Black America, which began with the Black founding, the Black pioneers." Am I on? With the Black pioneers, and not the white founding fathers. The white founding fathers were not the Black founding fathers. The white Constitutional Convention was not the Black Constitutional Convention. The white beginning was not the Black beginning. For as everybody knows, the white fathers defined the white beginning as a Black negation. To them and to many who came after them, America was a white place, defined negatively by the absence of blackness. The Puritans' celebrated dream of a city on the hill was a dream of a white city. The vision of Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, slave owners all, Masons as well, was a vision of white. It means simply that Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Jefferson's slaves lived a different Declaration of Independence, a different revolution, and a different America. Black America was therefore present at its own creation. It was not only present, it was present and active. It helped to make it so, and we must never lose sight of the fact that while just last week America celebrated its 213th year as a nation, that Prince Hall Freemasonry celebrated its 214th year of existence. And so this separation is reflected in American Masonic history. And while we of the Prince Hall Craft are well aware of mainstream Masonic history and your men of faith, you have very little knowledge of their true anti-Masonic nature. Let me explain. Jerry Marson noted in his preface of my book, quiz book that you so kindly published, and I quote, "While editing the book, I found myself offended at some of the statements and some of the quotations. I was especially disturbed with Louis Bloch, one of my Masonic heroes, who was quoted as saying, in effect, that Negroes were not mentally or morally qualified to be Freemasons. And when I looked up the reference, I was even more disturbed at Bloch." Unquote. That was German. Some years ago, I wrote an article for the Flaxus magazine, which was titled "Rebelling Freemasonry and the Ku Klux Klan," where I traced the history of Klansmen Albert Pike and the role of the Supreme Council of Southern Jurisdiction. And I realized that you are all members here, most of you, of the Southern Jurisdiction. The Southern Jurisdiction does occupy Ireland. I'm fully aware of that. The Supreme Council of Southern Jurisdiction, which normally calls itself the Mother Supreme Council of the world, and its involvement with the anti-black, anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, anti-American Klan. Many were shocked by my article, and I can remember while doing research for it, I found the book on Pike in the Library of Congress, and in it the author wrote that it could not be true that Pike had any role in the Klan. Yet the facts were there for anyone who wanted to take the time to do the necessary research. And so we have Albert Pike, not only buried in Washington, D.C., in the House of the Temple, and there is also a statue of him on one of the streets in this predominantly black city, which whites call Washington, and blacks call D.C., and the black kids call Chocolate City. Our muse of history would surely drop her head in shame, and so should Freemasonry, for history demands the truth. And the word Pike comes with blood on his apron. I was always curious in reading Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry why he was so opposed to Masonry for blacks. And wanting to get to the bottom of it, I began to track his life. And I was later to learn, and record in my book, Black Square Covers, that during the Civil War, Albert Mackey, had to go before black Union troops and plead with them to save his city, and later witness these black soldiers march through and occupy his hometown of Charleston, South Carolina. And while Dr. Mackey would take on the mantle of Negrophobia, had he been a true follower of the muse, he might have learned that with these black Union troops, there was a Prince Hall Masonic Lodge attached, a lodge that had been meeting within the Union lines, and obviously had the blessings of their white officers, many who were Freemasons, as it is recorded in the history of that black regiment. Our use of history demands the truth. The Caucasian Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, which bears responsibility for the separation of our two Masonic powers, claims it was founded in 1733, while all of universal Freemasonry knows that this is not true. And the fact that she failed to extend the fraternal hand of friendship to Prince Hall and his African Lodge. Nevertheless, we are here, a Masonic power, older than the United States itself. And we are here to remind all of the falsehood of the past and what Brother W.E.B. Du Bois called the propaganda of history, that is, lies agreed upon, the gathering up of a vast number of materials, and then the selection of those materials which supports one's thesis while discarding others. Our use of history demands the truth. Or as Brother Du Bois would write, and I quote, As a student of science, I want to be fair, objective, and judicial, to let no searing of the memory by intolerable insult and cruelty make me fail to sympathize with human frailties and contradictions in the eternal paradox of good and evil. But armed and warned by all this, and fortified by long study of the facts, I stand aghast at what American historians have done to this field. I continue to say this over and over. Please listen to me, research large. Our muse of history demands the truth. And what does this say to you, members of a research large? To be honest, to take the required time to do proper research and present your facts as truthfully as you can. As I read the works of mainstream Masonic writers published in the Philadelphia magazine and a number of Masonic lodges of research, I have come to the conclusion that most of the authors do not know what they are talking about, and especially if they are attempting to write about Prince Hall Freemasonry. As scholars of this Iowa Research Lodge, do you recall Melvin M. Johnson's book, The Beginning of Freemasonry in America? And if you haven't read it, then you should keep sending a copy from the library. He wrote, and I quote, "Nothing can justify the deliberate concealment of a reliable document or the publication of that which is manufactually fraudulent, manifestly fraudulent for the purpose of bolstering up an argument in support of some pet theory which the fraternity is asked to believe," unquote. I mention this because in the recent editions of the California Freemason, and let me say, I receive all of the publications that is printed across both sides of the line, all Prince Hall and all mainstream Freemasonry. They all come to my post office box. In the recent edition of the California Freemason has been running an article entitled "Our Separated Brethren, Prince Hall Masons, Part 1, of the story of a slave who became a Mason." Well, that sounds dramatic, doesn't it? The author is a past master from New Zealand who describes how Prince Hall was seized in some part of West Africa as a lad between 11 and 14 years of age, brought to New England by a slave trader and sold as a slave. As a reference, this author, who has let his imagination run away with him, gives only one. That is an article by George Dreyfus, a past Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Scotland. And that paper that he wrote was entitled simply "Prince Hall Freemasonry." But what our New Zealand author was not aware that George Dreyfus was an honorary fellow of the Phylaxis Society. And the article in question was published simultaneously in the Transactions of Porto Fortunati Lodge 2076 in London, England, and the Phylaxis magazine. And that Brother Dreyfus made it known that this was only his view, in a word, his personal view, and that there was no documentation to back up this view. Yet our New England author made it a point not to mention that little fact. I gotta take this from my wife. She views everything that I have to say, and she scolds me. My wife is a psychiatrist. But she was the first lady of the Phylaxis Society. I really wish she was able to come here, but she was sick, and I thought it best for her to stay home. So I sorely needed her company when I was driving. Love to work. Don't forget, we have a standing invitation to come down to our hotel. Don't forget that. Anyway, and it's for this reason that I say that mainstream Freemasonry should not write about Prince Hall Freemasons, or you bring shame to the muse of history. Harold Van Buren Bart. Let me see, you all research large. You're research large, so all these names I know you know. No problems. Harold Van Buren Boris, one of Jerry's good friends, used to be. John Sherman, Boston, Massachusetts. Edward R. Cussick of New York. Harold Wilson Coyle, Sr., remember his encyclopedia. Alphonse Serza, who wrote me and told me that our names were alike and that I too had a receding forehead. Serza and I did not hit horses, let me say that. Albert Pike, Albert Mackey, and others who are held in high esteem by mainstream American Freemasonry are held in utter contempt by Prince Hall Freemasonry, for they know us not. While they often write about our patron saint, Prince Hall, and attempt to pass judgment 200 years afterwards of him, none ever recorded his words. And if you want to know the measure of a man, read what he writes and read what he says. Today, in 1989 and 1988 and 87, we have people who have the audacity and the nerve to attempt to sit in judgment of Prince Hall and the events that took place over 200 years ago. We've been a Masonic power for a very long time. And we all have shared your jurisdiction with us. And there is no such thing as territorial jurisdiction. There is no such thing. It is a figment of somebody's wild imagination. Because we have always shared your jurisdiction with Prince Hall all across these United States of America. But of course it doesn't matter. You went up there to Alaska, it didn't matter who was up there. You set up a grand lodge like the rest. Let me read you something that Prince Hall, when he gave the charge to African Lodge. And this was in June 24th, 1797. That's a mighty long time. Listen to the words of Prince Hall, the man. Live and act as Masons, that you may die as Masons. Let those despisers see. Although many of us cannot read, yet by our searches and researches into men and things, we have supposed that defect, and if they will let us, we shall call ourselves a chartered lodge of just and lawful Masons. Be always ready to give an answer to those that ask you a question. Give the right hand of affection and fellowship to whom it justly belongs. Let the color and complexion be what it will. Let the nation be what it may. For they are your brethren, and it is your indispensable duty so to do. Let them as Masons deny this. We and the world know what to think of them. Be they ever so great, for we know this was Solomon's creed. Solomon's creed, did I say? It is the decree of the Almighty, and all Masons have learned it. 'Tis plain market language, and plain and true facts need no apologies. And who can forget in the same charge these moving lines by our patron Prince Hall? Among these numerous sons and daughters of distress, I shall begin with our friends and brethren. And first, let us see them dragged from their native country by the iron hand of tyranny and oppression, from their dear friends and connections, with weeping eyes and aching hearts, to a strange land and a strange people, whose tender mercies are cruel, and there to bear the iron yoke of slavery and cruelty till death, as a friend relieves them. And once again, from the same charge of 1797 by Prince Hall. Patience, I say, for were we not possessed of a great measure of it, You could not bear upon the daily insults you meet with in the streets of Boston, much more on public days of recreation. How are you shamefully abused, and that at such a degree that you may truly be said to carry your lives in your hands. And the arrows of death are flying about your heads. Hopeless old women have their clothes torn off their backs, even to the exposing of their nakedness. And by whom are these disgraceful and abusive actions committed? Not by the men born and bred in Boston, for they are better bred, but by a mob or horde of shameless, low-lived, envious, spiteful persons, some of them not long since servants in gentlemen's kitchens, scoring knives, tending horses, and driving chase. So 'twas said by a gentleman who saw that filthy behavior in the common, that in all the places he had been in, he never saw so cruel behavior in all his life, and that a slave in the West Indies on Sunday and holidays enjoys himself and friends without any molestation. Not only this man, but many in town who have seen their behavior to you, and that without any provocation, 20 or 30 cowards, all upon one man, have wondered at the patience of blacks. 'Tis not for want of courage in you, for they know that they dare not face you man for man, but in a mob, which we despise, and had rather suffer wrong than to do wrong, to the disturbance of the community and the disgrace of our reputation. For every good citizen doth honor to the laws of the state which he resides. That's principle. Isn't it strange that those who attempt to write about Prince Hall Freemasonry never, but never record the words of Prince Hall? And I ask you, brethren in research law, be honest to the muse of history. Do the proper research, and above all, be truthful. Let me share this thought with you. It is taken from my book, Black Square and Compass, Part 1 of Chapter 9, titled The Masonic Philosophy of Samuel W. Clark, taken from his book, The Negro Mason and Equity, which was written in the year 1886. Masons of the world, and I quote, wheresoever dispersed, the Negro Mason of America stands before you today as a just and rightful Mason, and as such demands that you shall try him by the square of virtue. And having tried him and found him just and true, he further demands that you deny him not, but that you receive him and accept him, according to him all of the rights that may belong to him. He does not make this demand because he is a Negro. Neither does he ask that you do this as a favor. But he demands it because he is a Mason as you are, and because it is right to the title of free and accepted Mason is equal to yours, no more and no less. And Brother Clark also wrote, as Negro Masons, we need expect no recognition from organized white American Masons, and I plead for none. I care for none at the sacrifice of honor and dignity. I stand as just, as true, as pure a Freemason as ever trod God's green earth. My title is as perfect as that of the Prince of Wales or the President of the United States, as he who travels with the caravan over the desert, or he who goes on the plains of the far west, wherever he may be upon the continents of the land, or the islands of the sea. If he be a Freemason, he is my brother, and cannot deny me if he would. In other words, what they're saying is that render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar. I've always wondered if you would find yourself out there in some dark, isolated place, terrorized, and you decided that you would give the grand hailing sign of distress, I'm sure that you wouldn't have mind if it was a principal Mason that came to you. I'm sure. Brethren of this research lodge, be faithful to the muse of history. Do not insult her by being untruthful. Do your homework. Do the necessary research into your Masonic subjects. Leave no stones unturned in the search for the truth. Do not be like your brethren of the past and tell half-truths and falsehoods. Do not allow your imagination to run away with you like Mackey and his so-called 25 landmarks. And should you decide to write about this Masonic power called Prince-Hall Freemasonry, come to this side of the table to learn the other side of the issue. Come to the Prince-Hall Masonic scholars who have ate well at the table of Masonic research. Leave your baggage on the other side of the table and come and walk in our shoes. For the muse of history look at you with contempt and pity. And Prince-Hall Freemasonry will pass judgment on you in the collapse of society and tell the world that you know not. We who are Masonic historians, scholars, if you will, writers, have an obligation to craft, to do our work well. Let me close with this story. I am proud to be a Prince-Hall Freemason. I am proud to carry the torch that Prince-Hall lit before this country was born. I am proud of those millions of brethren who continue the heritage from that day, through the days of slavery, through the Civil War and all the other wars that have been fought by this nation, through the days of darkness, of evil, of hatred, of persecution, of discrimination, of racism, of Masonic separation. And I am here to say to all within the sound of my voice, I am proud, proud, proud to be a Prince-Hall Freemason. And in the words of our Prince-Hall Credo, I believe in Freemasonry, that corporate adventure and universal brotherhood, despising kinship with no child of the All-Father. I believe in Prince-Hall Masonry, a door of benevolence, securely tiled against the unworthy, but open wide to men of good report, whether Aaron or Hottentot. I believe in Masonic vows, the trope of true men, quiet and their better selves. Thank you. Your conference of Grand Masters, you have 2% out there that you can claim for membership. You need to start working on it. We have the same problem. There is no difference between the two bodies. We are losing men. They're dying. They're not coming into large. If you have 2%, we have a portion of that 2% as well. That report that was published, there's a videotape on it. You should get it. Research Lodge should have it. Basic thing is you need to go out and do a little bit of public relations and go after that 2% of the American population. We have from 2% to 50% that you can grab. And you need to go out there and get them, because we're dying. You have this diagram over here, Home Lodge number 2 that you're thinking of building. You have maybe 700 members. You might have 200 members by the time we get around and build that. Think about that. Think about that. Prince-Hall is losing members. Go ahead,
out, Joe. In a most friendly manner, you tweaked us just a little bit over the knowledge of the names of some of the writers, some of whom are familiar to us, some of whom may not be to each individual. But I think it goes a long way beyond this. If my understanding is correct, at least one jurisdiction in the United States who has central place law, we will be happy to issue charters to any of your lodges. There have been many ways of attempting to make a reconciliation between the two bodies. What is your feeling?
He was also been said to the world to reach out on the lodges. This was done down in Wisconsin. But one reason is you have to understand the history behind this. The history is that they was taking, somebody put an official membership up there in Wisconsin, and the person was turned down, so he went to the court there to file against the Grand Lodge and to do away with their tax status. And so therefore they decided to, in order to defeat this charge against them, they went out and got one of their members who happened to be a retired Supreme Court judge. And he issued a paper, which I happen to have at home. And in that paper he calls for the rechartering of the principal lodges in the jurisdiction of Wisconsin. Well, how dare he? We have been here 200 years. What right does he think that we want to be rechartered? We do not want to be. Let me finish. We do not want to be rechartered. We are quite happy to have our own heritage. We have no intentions of giving up our heritage unless you're going to change your name over to the most worshipful principle of Grand Lodge. But and I doubt if you can do that. But the only thing that we have ever asked of you for 200 years is to get this charge of bastardry on us. It's the only thing we've ever asked for. In 200 years, we've never asked to visit you. We have never asked to become a part of you. The only thing we have asked is recognition, recognize us. Wow, we have a problem. We have more black clandestine lodges. As somebody said that it's like fleas on the highway at night when you turn the lights on. That's how many black organizations are floating around these United States of America that call themselves Masons. And it's an abuse, it's crime, it's black on black crime. And the only way that we can defeat these people is to be recognized.
Now, there was no intent to insult.
Right, you're not taking.
I would like to let some.
Okay, here comes the insult.
Joe brought up an idea for recognizing Prince Hall Masonry, and he modestly, very modest man, called it the Watts plan for reorganization. And I like it. Explain.
It's a rather complicated blueprint. It's called the Watts blueprint. And for that reason, I guess a lot of people have tried to ignore it, but it's there in Oxford. It calls for the Caucasian mainstream Grand Lodge to declare their counterparts in their state as provisional Grand Lodges. And leave them alone. Just the end of this. Well, okay, Prince Hall Grand Lodge in Iowa is a provisional Grand Lodge. That's the end. If you know the Masonic history, you will understand that. If you know basically, you will understand.
Explain how the Bill of Rights is responsible and what happens for as head. And give me credit for at least like that
When I was in the Army, and I'm a military retiree, I came back to the United States. While I was in Korea, in the Republic of Korea, I ran across a publication with my Sergeant Major had, and it was the Royal Archmason magazine. I've never seen it before. And so I read it through, somewhere in there, I read about the Food Atheist Society or something. And so when I got back to the United States and everything, I decided, well, I wanted to receive the magazine, so the only way to do that is to join. So I sent off a letter, they sent me an application, I filled it out, honestly, truthfully. put the money in there, put the check in there, send it back, send my membership. I started receiving the Philadelphia magazine. Of course, during the process of receiving this magazine over a stretch of time, I thought it'd be kind of nice if the principal Freemasons had a like organization. And so I decided, well, I would organize a like organization, just like the society. When the Masonic wrote a little article, which I took offense to, about Prince Law, and I started studying about Prince Law. Certainly I was not knowledgeable at the particular time, not even close to admitting it. And of course, I sent him some hot, nasty letters, and he sent me some hot, nasty letters back. We had a nice time. Anyway, I decided that we needed a like organization in Prince Law Freemasonry. I had a problem. My problem was the Grand Masters. Brother Chamberlain, no offense. What's Brother Chamberlain at? No offense, but I had a problem with Grand Masters. Finding that Grand Masters like to run things. I had a problem with that. And so I decided that I would use my military brethren all across the United States and overseas to set up a counterpart to the Philadelphia society before the Grand Masters found out. And that's what we did. We set up, and within a year's time, we was truly an international organization. We started publishing Flax's magazine at that particular time. And I went to at that time, we had some long-term Grand Masters. Our Grand Master in Tennessee, I think, just celebrated his 44th Grand Master Williams in Tennessee. I think he just celebrated his 40th or his 44th year in office as Grand Masters. We have problems with tenureship. We're not necessarily interested in tenureship in some of the southern states of Principal Freemasonry. But anyway, I went to the Grand Master of Louisiana, who was at that time the premier Grand Master. He had been in office over 30 years at the time, and he was highly respected by his fellow Grand Masters. And I asked for his protection, and he offered for his protection. And his name is John G. Lewis. And I read a book here recently, John G. Lewis Jr., the end of the era, the history of the Principal Freemasonry of Louisiana, 1842 to 1979, up until his death in 1979. That book, I think, was in the Masonic Library, should anyone be interested in reading it. And anyway, with this protection, we were settled in, and the Grand Masters left us alone. And we have continued now. We've been operating now 16 years. We just held our 16th anniversary here in our office. And we're mighty proud of our accomplishments. We're mighty proud of the Philadelphians too. We had some problems out of it. We used the title MPS and FPS just like they do. Our surgeon wrote me a hot, nasty letter about that, suggesting that I should change that to XPS or something like that. I told him take a jump someplace. I had a lot of problems with surgery. He and I used to communicate also. I had a lot of problems out of it. So anyway, the Flax's, I have applications if any of you want to join. I'd be more than happy to leave them with you. John, we allowed you to join. You can either become a subscriber or a member. That's strictly up to you. But we do, I think we respect applications. Flax's Society is doing good. Flax's Magazine is doing good. And certainly I talk about the Philadelphians in every aspect. We have just reorganized and have finally, after 16 years, broken the original mold of the Philadelphia Society. We've broken away from that. We've done a little reorganization and set up some way that the society can exist after my departure, like death or otherwise. I'm getting older now, not as radical as I used to be. I had a lot of problems with many of my counterparts across the world who I used to communicate with, and I used to communicate with all of them. And some called me militant. I didn't know about militant. So I had a lot of problems, but we worked it out. I'm a little older now. So I'm not as sharp and tongue problem as I used to be. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are we getting any closer by comparison, you're thinking between the Masonic bodies of Prince Hall and in my day and age between the white and color, I think not referred to black.
I can't keep up with this call.
Respectfully, I make that
Yeah, I can answer. I'll try to answer
But
that.
is there any, are you getting any closer or having better communication? It really seems like the Urban League, NAACP, some of the political factors, people that's involved, very pessimistic, say that they're going down the drain insofar as our civil rights and this type of thing. Not necessarily with blacks either. There's a certain element of what we commonly refer to in the South originally is poor trash. And I think in my era, possibly, I associated among some of those, along with what was termed that time as the light neighborhood. Are you advancing any further? Are we getting any further in our nation?
Well, at least as far as Freemasonry is concerned, the answer is yes. There was a time that I was quite negative, and I would always maintain that it would never happen in my lifetime. I was very negative. And I see today I cannot keep up with it, as I said in my speech. I cannot keep up with many contacts now that are being made between the two Masonic powers. They meet together, they meet quite often. I think this December, the Grand Lodge in Connecticut will take up the matter of recognizing Prince Hall. And that particular jurisdiction is very unique because the two Grand Lodges get along like brothers should get along. They're very close. They share the same Masonic hospital and everything else. They are very close. They do not meet formally in lodge together, but everything else they meet together. They hold joint training meetings together. They have table lodges together. They do a lot of things together. So come this December when the Grand Lodge of Connecticut meets, that is one of the issues that we're going to take up. If they pass that recognition of the Prince Hall Freemasonry, I would suspect that would be followed by recognition from the state of Washington, Nebraska, Iowa, New York. And if New York comes aboard, they would automatically put pressure on Massachusetts, where this problem began in the first place. And so we are all looking towards Connecticut. If you read my magazine, I've read a good copy of it. We did a whole series on Africa by video and the rebuilding of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge there. If you can remember, all of the Grand Lodge officers in line were taken out and put up against poles and assassinated, shot, and killed. Grand Lodge Temple, the Masonic Grand Lodge Temple was turned over to people who went in and desecrated the Grand Masonic Temple. And if you've ever seen a picture of that Grand Masonic Temple, it's certainly the finest Masonic temple anywhere in the world. It was completely desecrated. All the Masonic pictures were pulled out, windows were pulled out, toilets were pulled out, and the people's squatters, if you will, were set in there. And the Grand Lodge had to go underground. The members of the lodges had to go underground. All of the Grand Lodge officers in line to include the sitting Grand Master was murdered by this young Master Sergeant called Samuel Bell. And today, this year, that Grand Lodge was finally given permission to open its doors again. And Samuel Bell, who's now the president of the nation, was initiated into Freemasonry because that was the deal. The deal that we tried to get from Prince Hall University earlier and was turned down. But in order to reestablish the lodges and the Grand Lodge of Liberia, we had to cut that deal. And so just a few months ago, we was made a principal. And they said, there in Liberia, we sent the 7 Grand Masters from the United States over there, plus outside the world, around the world, and Mason. And so So they are seeking recognition from the Grand Lodge of England. The Grand Lodge of England used to recognize them. The two other Grand Lodges there that belong to Scotland and England, which is Nigeria and Sierra Leone, will be coming over, will drop their recognition of England and Scotland and coming to the Prince Hall family. We expect this in time now. So to answer your questions, so that long with answer for you, I can honestly say within my heart that it seems like in my lifetime that I will see the day when the Prince Hall will be recognized. That's right. Thank you, brothers.
As outgoing Master of Research Lodge number 2, I again want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you for your wonderful talk this evening. And I think we ought to all go home and get back in the air conditioning of our own home, or at least in our cars. Thank you for coming.